Hey, gorgeous! Welcome to the Business Mindset Podcast with Holly Wharton, which combines powerful strategies on how to upgrade your business mindset, along with practical business tips to grow your business. This podcast features solo shows with Holly and also interviews with inspiring women entrepreneurs from around the world. Thank you so much for joining us today. And now, here's your host, Holly Wharton.
Hello and welcome to the Business Mindset Podcast, episode 169. This is your host, Holly Wharton, and I'm here with today's special guest, Jessica Improta. Jessica is a licensed therapist, coach, and founder of the Om Lab, the first of its kind live virtual meditation studio, offering short but sweet meditations from the comfort of your home or office. Om Lab works at the intersection of presence and action to provide accessible happiness through meditation, coaching, and group programs. Welcome, Jessica.
Thank you. Good to be here.
I'm super excited to talk to you today about your very unique business. So why don't you start out by telling us a little bit about your background and your business journey and how you got to where you are today with your business?
Sure. So my background most recently in the last 10 years is that I'm a licensed therapist. Before that, I did some different things. I worked in PR, lived in New York for a little bit after college, but got licensed as a therapist and did a lot of work working with trauma, working with children in the foster care system, working with sexual assault victims, just a lot of trauma, a lot of work with families, a lot of work with individuals and children. And sort of in the back of my mind has always been this desire to be my own boss, to be doing things only answering to myself, really. And, at a certain point with that work, it becomes very draining. Yeah. And there were a few things that happened over the last few years where my mother passed 2.5 years ago, and I went to Bali, and I planned to actually move to Bali for a period of time. And it really just woke up both the spiritual side of myself and also this desire to really make an impact in the way that I'd been envisioning for a long time. Mm-hmm. So I took the skills and I took the teachings and the learnings that I had from both the therapeutic, the psychological side of things, and really wanted to bring in the things that I gathered from the Eastern philosophy. And meditation has been something that's been really present and a huge part of my life for the last 3 years, really since my mom's passing. So my journey basically just through a brief foray into working for a software company. Yeah, I know. For about 1.5 years, I was doing the customer education for that. I really, really got to see there what it's like to be a startup and to be involved in a startup. And I learned a lot from that experience. So it was a software for therapists. And so it kind of helped bridge that thing that I needed to understand the entrepreneur side, the business side, and then also all the clinical stuff that I've been doing for years and years.
And the technical side.
Yeah, on the technical side. Yeah, I think a SaaS company, a software as a service company, is quite an undertaking. So I knew I didn't want to do that. That's for sure. Yeah, so I basically had the chance to kind of see that side of things, and it just became clear to me after running a pilot and really doing some research with people in terms of their meditation practices and stress in their lives that a lot of people wanted to be meditating, but they're not doing it. And I started to ask myself, well, why aren't they doing it? Because there's plenty of resources out there. You can't.
It's good for you, but you're still not doing it.
Yeah, and it's the same way with going to the gym, right? We all know it's a good thing, but sometimes we just don't seem to get around to it, or other things seem more pressing. So that was how I got to the point of making the decision of how I wanted to proceed and transmuting my skills as a therapist into the coaching side of the business as well.
Excellent. So what are the biggest benefits you've seen in your life as a result of creating this habit of meditation?
So for me, I feel like it's a grounding of a tuning fork. So I tend to be, as many of us do, very much in my head. I kind of run on the anxious side of things. And the biggest benefit I've seen is that it always brings me back to a present grounded state. So I can feel like things are going really, really haywire, things are chaotic, and I can come back to that place of meditation. And it's always a safe place for me to come and know that like the present moment is what's there for me. And that allows me then to make decisions and to proceed, whether it's in business or personal things, in a way that is more peaceful. So, for me, it's like, I think that we run around in this stressful world and we're constantly just adding stress from all sides. And being able to pause, being able to be still even if it's a very short few moments of just some deep breathing, is beneficial. And for me, it helps me come back to that place of just being centered.
Yeah, it completely changes the rhythm of what you're doing.
Yeah, and we underestimate the value of slowing down. We think that we need to push harder all the time. And it's this counterintuitive thing.
Yep. I just had a session today with my business mentor, and she channels guides and things like that as she's giving me practical business advice. And the big thing that came up today was, interestingly, I need to slow down. And I'm running too fast. And the most important thing I can do now is to take a break and stop moving so fast. So,
and probably you want to resist that a little bit. I'm guessing.
Exactly. The second she said that to me, I was like, damn it, but no, I need to be doing more.
Yeah, give me another idea. Let me have something else. We'll come back to that later.
Exactly. So yeah, I completely agree with you. And I think my first business, I was just crazy, running around like a chicken with its head cut off, really stressful, working far too long, like too many hours. And I've consciously made a decision to not do that with this business, but I still have that tendency. So yeah.
Yeah. And many of your listeners, many entrepreneurs, they do, and they're driven and they want to get somewhere. And I think sometimes the meditation allows you to stop and say, where am I going to? What am I trying to get to? And how does it serve me? And is it really aligned with what I want? Or is there something else that's driving it? If you can start to really get into the self underneath the thoughts, then you can make decisions that will best guide you.
Yeah, exactly. And I think so many business coaches out there say, you've got to hustle, to make your business work. And we come from hearing that all over the place. You've got to hustle, you've got to work hard. And that's so inconsistent with what we really need, which is to take some breaks every once in a while. I mean, you do have to work, obviously, to build your business, but you do need to have those breaks as well.
Yeah. And don't you think it's a little bit like that idea of busyness? It's like we wear it like this badge of honor.
Yes.
I'm hustling and I'm busy and look at me, I'm so busy. And what's the default for most people? How are you? Oh, I'm so busy. But do you really stop and think, are you intentionally busy? Or are you just filling time? Are these things that are furthering you? Are they even what you want? Is your stress taking a toll because of it? And it's not really a badge of honor to work yourself into a tizzy, to just feeling like, batshit crazy.
Yeah. And I think a lot of us know what that's like. I've definitely been there. And it's very, very disconcerting because it's like you're totally not grounded. You're just going crazy all the time. And it's really hard to just kind of get centered and come back to yourself. It's taken me years to recover from my first business, to be honest.
A little post-traumatic stress, huh?
Exactly. So yeah, I'm definitely a big fan of taking time out, even though I don't do it, obviously, as much as I should.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be much. It doesn't have to be you don't have to take a week vacation every time you're feeling stressed. If you want to, go for it. But, you'd probably take the whole year off. But, just even taking breaths in the day and taking just a few deep breaths just calms your nervous system so significantly on that exhale. And we don't even notice that we're breathing 99.9% of the time.
And we're breathing very shallow, 99.9% of the time.
Yep, working ourselves up, working our nervous system in this tight ball of energy.
Mm-hmm. So how often do you meditate and how long do you meditate?
So I meditate every day. I average, right now, because I'm also leading the classes, I usually do about 20 minutes myself. Before the business, I would do like 30 to an hour a day, not necessarily all in one sitting, but that's kind of my sweet spot. It didn't start like that though, believe me.
So tell us a little bit, because I know a lot of our listeners will be, experienced meditators. Other people will think, oh, I've heard this so many times. I know I should do it, but I haven't done it yet. How was it for you to get started? I mean, are you able to remember the difficult times? I
am, really clearly, because I was that person and I learned about mindfulness all through grad school and in internships. And it just, at that point, and I do believe that we all come to the place of really connecting to meditation in our journey at different points. But at that point, I just wasn't into it. I thought it was boring. I thought I didn't understand all the breathy tones and I just wasn't there. And I took a specific course, an intro to mindfulness that was designed to kick me into it. And I didn't really like it. And it didn't totally make sense to me. I just felt like it was over-explained and complicated in a certain way. And so when I went to Bali, that was actually when it clicked into place. And not just from the spiritual aspect of it, but the very first meditation that I did there with a local healer was just very simple. It was just, I love you, Jessica. And you wouldn't think that in the East, you'd think, well, they've been doing this for thousands of years. There's some complicated way that they do it, or, there's a whole invoking of spirit and all those things. But it was so simple, and there was no pressure. And it was just calling in this phrase and just sitting with it. And something about it, maybe it was being in the rice fields, maybe it was being there to heal my mom. Something about it just made sense to me. It was like, oh, this is not complicated. This is just about getting to the core of who you are and clearing away all the noise and the cobwebs. And you don't have to add to it all of this, all of the scientific studies that we love in the West and, all of the articles that you can read. All of that stuff isn't really necessary. It's really just sitting down, and it's just connecting to who you are and what is at the core. Who were you born as, really, before you started adding these layers on top of your basic innate goodness. And so it was initially something that I didn't love. I thought I would never love it. And then in an instant, it just became clear that I was just overcomplicating it and really trying to make it more than it needed to be.
So on your website, you talk a little bit about the power of the kind of meditation that you do as opposed to guided visualizations. So can you tell us a little bit about the difference? Because I think a lot of people will be familiar with more of the guided visualization type of meditations.
Yeah, there's so much that you can get on YouTube, and there's so much out there that's about taking you on a journey of visualizing soft babbling brooks and trees. And, the more, I believe that there's value for those, for sure, especially in the area of stress reduction, just taking yourself out of your normal stressful day to day. It can be very helpful to have your hand held along that journey. Personally, I think that you get a deeper meditation, you get a deeper understanding of yourself and a deeper connection to whatever you consider source or spirit or those things by actually quieting down and by actually giving yourself a chance to work through the noise that comes up. Because the minute you get quiet, you will notice that you're really loud. And we spend most of our time doing things to deny that, being busy, various things that people dive into, partying or work or shopping or things like that. It's all designed to not go inward. And so I think there's incredible value in sitting still and seeing what comes up, and then learning when those things come up to listen with compassion. Because what our tendency is that at the minute we hear those voices come in and we start to observe them and recognize them, we don't like them. And then we want to start adding that second layer of judgment on top of everything that's happening. And we live in this very judgmental world. And so while there's benefit from the standpoint of stress relief for guided visualizations, and, at some point I may bring someone in who specializes in that, I think that it's a practice for a reason, and you don't get good at it from your first sitting, but sitting quietly and listening is where there's incredible value.
And I think that's really important what you've just said, because I think you can see the value of practice with things like learning a musical instrument or dancing or things like that. But with meditation, I think people expect to get it right from the start because it's not doing anything. You're just sitting there being quiet. It should happen easily. And when it doesn't, I think people are like, oh, well, that didn't work. So moving on.
Yeah. And that's the culture we live in too. We want to have quick fixes for everything, especially when it comes to our pain. And it just doesn't work like that. Like, it took a lot of years to dig these grooves in our minds of how we think about ourselves and how we think about the world. And so starting to step back and see those things, it does take a little bit of time, and we have to be patient with ourselves.
Yeah, definitely. So you have completely reinvented the meditation industry here because you've taken live meditations and put them online. So tell us a little bit about what was the thought process behind that, because that didn't exist before you created it.
Yeah, it doesn't exist. What exists now is there's live meditations in person, obviously, and then there's things you can get from the internet. How it came about was really born out of a problem I think I was solving for myself, is that I wanted community and I wanted accountability, but I didn't want to get in my car and drive to a class. And I also didn't feel like when I had taken classes in the past that I did much between the classes. Like if it was a 6-week series or an 8-week series, I would take the class and then I wouldn't do anything in between. And as I started to talk to people and as I ran some contained pilots, I kept hearing the same thing over and over again. I want to do it, but I'm not doing it. and there's no studio near me, or I don't remember to use my app, or I could listen to things online, but let's face it, I'm not going to. And so it was really the accountability piece that was missing. And also just knowing that you'd show up and you would see other people there with you. So it was bringing in all of those things together and saying, well, how can I, because this isn't something that you need to be at a gym to do. You can do it anywhere. You can meditate on a busy street corner if you want to. So
that's advanced level meditation, I think.
Yeah, that's next level. We'll take classes out to the streets soon. No, but it was just trying to understand why there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of articles that are being written. And there was a video that I watched recently that had been viewed like 19 million times. It was just a simple explanation of meditation. And I was thinking, like, how many of these 19 million people actually meditate even once a week? So trying to just bring the instruction to where you are and give you the opportunity to create the space in your home or office and do a meditation that isn't lengthy. It's not an hour and a half. It doesn't include a Dharma talk or anything like that. It's just you come in, there's some light guidance to help you through the mindful practices. There's different meditations, different instructions, and you're in, you're out, and you're on with your day. And you have someone experience that you can bounce things off of if you need to.
So how do you create a community around this online meditation? Because you mentioned that was a really important part of meditation for you.
Yeah, for me, there are people in my life that I'm really connected to with meditation. So it's something that we're constantly in communication about that. Building the community from this, I think this is one of those places where and you may ask me about this at some time about like mindset, but learning to let go of the explicit plans in favor of addressing what the people who are using the service want and need. And so what I found is that people really love to come in and have other people with them. But the people that I'm working with are very busy people. They're people that they want to come in, do their meditation, and then they're on with their very busy lives. So it provides the support in the space of the meditation, and then creating community outside of that is something that I'm still exploring.
Oh, excellent. Okay. So tell me what kind of mindset you had to have in order to invent something that really didn't exist. I mean, as you said, we've all like gone to yoga or gone to meditations at a place with someone, and we've all done the guided, or some of us have done the guided meditations, but this was something so totally different. Like, what mindset did you have to say, I'm just going to give it a try?
Yeah, it's ongoing. I think with mindset, it's always you have to like check yourself. And for me, it was staying in the space of my vision for why I was doing this, what I'm trying to provide for people, what's available to them, and staying there and drowning out any of the internal committee that has anything to say about it. Because when I initially was starting to talk about it, and I'm a yoga teacher as well, it wasn't particularly understood or received by the people who are, I would say, on the far side of the spectrum in their spiritual practice, because they felt like it didn't really make sense in a spiritual practice to be doing something in video conferencing, right? And so, for me, it definitely pulled up a lot of those old conversations of, this is a bad idea, why would you? But I had proof, and I had done pilots to show that there were people who were willing to do it. So it's constantly, and I do this in meditation all the time, it's sitting and it's observing the thoughts that come up. And for me, the mindset, it's a constant process. It's a constant saying, where am I doubting myself? And being willing to say, that's just a conversation. That's just where you default. And that doesn't mean that it's real. And so I use the meditation often to get over those mindset issues, because it's very easy when you're doing something new and people don't understand to doubt yourself. So it's a constant evolution for me, but it's really been about coming back to the practice, coming back to observing the thoughts and saying, I'm choosing not to go down this road right now. And it becomes a conscious choice. It becomes a choice to say, it's like the vein of ice cream, right? Like, I'm not following the fudge vein down to the bottom here, because this is just going to lead to like, and you eat all the ice cream too, but it's like, you don't want to go down that road.
Yeah, exactly. So what would your tips be to any listeners who have some maybe crazy ideas for their business or to reinvent things in their industry, but they're scared to take action on it because no one's ever done it before.
Yeah, well, I think it definitely can be a challenge to pave a new road.
Yeah.
But a couple of things that I would say is, you have to, first of all, test it out.
Yeah.
Put some feelers out there and see if your hypothesis is something that's accurate, and start taking some wise steps in the direction to see what you want to do.
And how long did you, sorry to interrupt, but how long did you test your program out before you actually made it a business?
I tested it out for a couple months.
Okay.
So I ran 2 different pilots, and they were a little bit different than the open class schedule that I have now. So they were contained classes where people showed up every single day. So it was a little bit different, but it was enough for me at that point. And yeah. And so then the second thing that I would say that you can do is ask yourself why you want to do this, and counter that also with, like, what's the worst that could happen? You know, I think that so many times, and I've certainly been a victim of this in the past, it's like, I don't want to do something because I'm not sure what the outcome's going to be.
Yeah.
And there's no such thing as a surefire outcome. There's no such thing as 100% guarantee with anything in life. And so, being aware that is going to come up, that fear is going to come up. It still comes up for me. It's, but then I remind myself that I can only address this moment right here. And I can have a larger strategy and I can do everything right. But, that doesn't guarantee anything. And so adjusting your expectations and letting go of the outcome as opposed to strong-arming your way to it gives you a little bit more peace in your day-to-day too. You can just surrender to doing the work, doing the best you can, and then seeing what the outcome is.
Excellent. So how are you feeling now that you've launched this completely new business in a very new industry?
I feel good. I feel there are moments where I feel confronted by my own fears. And then I feel these moments of euphoria. I feel really grateful for these people that come and sit with me, and the opportunity I have. Just this morning, there was someone on my meditation where we were doing a specific meditation called a loving kindness meditation. And she just had tears streaming down her face. And it was so beautiful to see that this practice of just sitting where it looks like nothing's happening, there's just this rich world that's going on behind all of our eyes, beneath all of our skin. And, so I feel really grateful that I have that opportunity. And I definitely am learning to adjust and learning to pivot as needed to continue moving in the right direction. But, overall, I feel good. I feel that there's a need for this. And then it's just a matter of reaching the right people.
Well, I think that's really important, is constantly reminding yourself that there is a need for this. Because, as we've said, it's something so totally new, so totally different, but there's very much a need for it because people aren't doing the things that they want to do in terms of meditation. So this is one good way to support them.
Yeah, absolutely. And and learning how to communicate so that people best understand it, that it's something that it's not, you can even step in if you've never done meditation before, and it's not going to be scary to come into a class with me because we provide that safe space.
So what is the space like? Is it audio or is it video?
It's video conference. You can certainly choose not to turn your camera on if you don't want to, but it's nice to see people's faces. And the advantage to that is that sometimes I can see people shifting. I can see certain things. So I get some insight into what someone's practice may have been like. And that allows for that communication if needed.
Excellent. Great. So Jessica, do you have any women business mentors? Are there any women entrepreneurs who inspire you?
Yeah, I actually have a mentor, Vasavi Kumar, who's been on your show before. And she's amazing. For her, I was drawn to her because, like you and I talked about in the beginning, her hustle. Yeah. And she's just this unapologetic, no nonsense. This is who I am. This is how I show up in the world. And I love that. I absolutely love that. Plus, I relate to her. She's also a social worker as well. And then on the other side of things, not personally, but I really respect her in terms of what she's creating in the world, is Brene Brown. And I say her because one of the things that I really love, and part of my message in the world, is that none of us are perfect. And there's this image that we're always putting out to the world that things are great, things are perfect, I've got it handled in my business and my life. And I love that she is so transparent and vulnerable. And obviously that's her message too. But she's also funny, and there's no shame in the fact that she's a real person. And so I really strive to incorporate that into my communications and how I come across, that it's not always wine and roses, but that doesn't mean that things aren't good. It just means that you're on this journey that we call being human.
Yeah. So Jessica, how can our listeners work with you? You've got obviously the live meditations. You've also got coaching. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So right now there's 2 ways to work with me directly. So one is that they can attend live virtual meditations, and they can go to theomlab.com, www.theomlab.com. The other way is that they can work with me one-on-one. I do coaching primarily in the area of helping people tap into their vulnerability, helping people really slow down and get clear on what their vision is so that they can move forward with a little bit more grace and ease. And then I also, for your listeners, I put together a 20-minute training on some of the things we talked about, basically using the tools of slowing down to actually be more successful. So if they want to check that out, they can go to theomlab.com/Holly.
Great. And we'll share that in the show notes as well.
Wonderful.
Perfect. So where can people find you online?
So they can find me at my website, theomlab.com. They can find me on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook. They're all theomlab.com, except Twitter is omlablife.
All right.
And always happy to hear from people, or they can shoot me an email at jessica@theomlab.com.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. This was fabulous. Great talking to you.
And I hope that this episode will encourage our listeners to maybe give meditation a try if it's not already a part of their normal routine.
Yeah, fingers crossed.
Yeah, we'll see. All right. So thank you again. And thank you for listening. And remember to visit hollywharton.com/169 for the show notes on this episode. Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening to the Business Mindset Podcast with your host, Holly Wharton. You can find more information about today's episode, including links for topics that were discussed, at hollywharton.com. And if you enjoyed this episode, please remember to head over to iTunes and leave a quick review of this podcast. It just takes a minute. Thank you.